Welcome to Jewish Federation and Family Services Annual Meeting and Board Installation. Please give a warm welcome to our Board Chair, Lori Schwartz.
Good evening. I am Lori Schwartz, and I'm honored to serve our community as Board Chair of Jewish Federation and Family Services. It's so good to see so many of our community members here tonight. Thank you for joining me and the entire Board of Jewish Federation and Family Services. I would like to thank Scott Braswell and the Mirage JCC for sharing the Isidore C. and Penny W. Myers Theater with us tonight. And more than that, I want to express appreciation on behalf of Jewish Federation and Family Services to Scott and the JCC for their important partnership with us. We have an important program tonight, so at this time I'd like to ask our Jewish Federation and Family Services President and CEO, Arlene Miller, to come to the stage.
Good evening, everybody. It's a full house here, and it's really great to be here this evening. Jewish Federation and Family Services has been an important presence in this community for more than 50 years, caring for vulnerable community members, guiding people of all ages on their Jewish journeys, convening Jewish community around important issues, and raising funds to power our Jewish community. Over these past 50 years, we have been evolving, and right now, we are undergoing significant change. What hasn't changed is that we are on track to raise more than $4 million this year, and with additional grants and program fees, we maintain an annual budget of more than $6 million that we use to strengthen our community and open doors to Jewish life. We are part of Jewish Federations of North America, which represents 146 Jewish federations and more than 300 network communities, raising and distributing more than $3 billion annually and through planned giving and endowment programs. So together, we make a significant impact. I'd like to focus for a few minutes on how you, our supporters, made that impact possible in 2019. And there's no better way to start that conversation than talking about the social services we offer. Our Family Services Division has gone through some change this past year and continues to make an incredible impact. I want to first let you know about these 3 critical social services that will continue to benefit our community into the future. So the first one is our Lifelines Emergency Assistance Program, which helps community members facing a financial crisis. This past year, your donations made so much help possible for those in need. We receive 80 to 90 calls per month from people who need emergency assistance. Our case manager, with 14 years experience, embraces each client with care and attention to understand their unique situation. She's then able to help by providing them with gift cards, food, and other assistance you funded. She also connects them with other organizations in the community as needed. For example, Susan. She's a single mom raising her 10-year-old daughter here in Orange County. She was diagnosed with stage 4 breast cancer and was waiting to receive her disability benefits. This put her at risk because she was not able to pay rent. Rather than losing her apartment, she called us, and we provided rent for 1 month while she waited for her benefits to start. This is one of many examples of the emergency assistance you helped us provide to people in need this year. Number 2, our Holocaust Survivor Program. It puts food on the table and helps pay for medicine for the 200 Holocaust survivors in Orange County we currently serve. We also help them purchase eyeglasses and hearing aids. We keep the lights and heat on. We provide case management, counseling, and transportation and create social opportunities to prevent isolation. Just last month, 20 artists from our community of Holocaust survivors showcased their work at our Arts Collective show in Laguna Woods. More than 250 attended, including 54 other local Holocaust survivors who get together monthly through our Cafe Europa program. One survivor, Hank, was among the first in our community to be matched with a volunteer through the Meal Partners program. We started Meal Partners 2 years ago to match volunteers with survivors for companionship. Hank is also an artist who's passionate about making intricate clocks and stained glass windows, and was so excited about the upcoming art show. A month before the event, he unfortunately was hospitalized from a bad fall, and the trauma of being in the hospital triggered his PTSD. His meal partner was by his side every step of the way to help him cope and heal, and ultimately, the art show gave him something to look forward to. There was a question submitted for tonight related to our exploration of how other agencies might take a role in serving our Holocaust survivors. We're very early in our exploration, too early to say what another organization's role would be specifically, but whatever the outcome, these are our community's Holocaust survivors, and we have a responsibility as a Jewish community to ensure by whatever means necessary that they age with dignity. Number 3, we also offer enrichment programming for adults with special needs, which we provide both through our Jeremiah Society and our 2 Jewish residential homes. Just about every month, we bring together adults with special needs and their families to encourage an active lifestyle and engagement in Jewish life. We also partner with Friendship Circle. Some of you may have had the pleasure of meeting Jacob, who lives in one of our Jewish residential homes. Through the support and mentorship of our community, Jacob's been able to turn his challenges into strengths, and he is now pursuing a goal of becoming a motivational speaker. Jacob told us that just because I have different abilities does not mean I don't have hopes and dreams. He said, "You have helped bring out the best in me, and you have helped me feel like we are one big family." Some of you may be wondering about the social service programs not listed here. With our strategic planning committee, we went through an evaluation of all our programs with a special focus on whether we were offering unique Jewish value through each program or service. The result was that some family service programs were moved to other organizations, or our clients were referred to other service providers in the community at the end of 2018 or beginning of 2019. Our Adopt a Family program, which helped families in need during the December holidays, was merged with our Lifelines Emergency Assistant program that provides support year-round. We had senior wellness and senior outreach and engagement services, which was a very small part of the work we do. We are now allowing experts and other organizations that do this full-time to take on that work. Our Silver Streak Transportation program provided rides to seniors, people with disabilities, and cancer patients. There are other organizations doing the same work on a larger scale and many more cost-effective transportation methods in Orange County. So we're able to transition the riders that were most in need to other organizations. We were providing unique Jewish value by giving rides to Holocaust survivors, and we are continuing this part of the program. Our counseling programs have been replaced by information and referral to other resources in the community. Clients were transitioned out of our program through the second quarter of this year to meet our ethical obligation to give them closure. We have made changes which may feel uncomfortable. At the same time, these decisions helped us focus and put resources where they could make the most difference. On that note, I want to share that technically, we are no longer a family services organization because we don't offer counseling services. As a result, our board unanimously approved changing the organization's name from Jewish Federation and Family Services of Orange County to Jewish Federation of Orange County. In 2020, you, our membership, will have the opportunity to vote on that name change before we implement it. In 2020, we will also conduct a Jewish community study to help us understand what programs and services are most needed in our Jewish community. And of course, we provide so much more than social services. As a Jewish federation, we guide community members of all ages on their Jewish journeys. And I want to share a few highlights that you made possible in 2019. We opened doors to Jewish life. When Natalie and Oren brought their young daughters, Ellie and Joelle, to Orange County from LA, they didn't know many people. But through our PJ Library program, they were introduced to other Jewish families in their neighborhood and made friends. Their girls also look forward to receiving their free Jewish picture book in the mail every month, made possible by our generous donors and a matching grant from the Harold Grinspoon Foundation. Our PJ Library program brings together families across Orange County in their own neighborhoods, like Huntington Beach or Brea or San Juan Capistrano, for Shabbat dinners and other get-togethers through our grassroots efforts and our Parent Connector program. And we also partner with our local congregations on these programs as well. We also help young adults build Jewish community and connect to Israel. So here we have Ben and Brittany, and they were among 20 young couples from 54 applicant couples that we sent to Israel on our honeymoon Israel trip this year, one of our many programs for young adults. Only 4 of these couples were connected with our Jewish community beforehand. Only 4 of those 54 that applied, who we are still in touch with. All the couples on the trip connected in new ways with the Jewish homeland and bonded tightly with each other. And since returning, we've also connected them with local Jewish community organizations to expand their Jewish horizon. Ben and Brittany and 5 other couples are now expecting their first child and are grateful to be part of the tight-knit Jewish community they built on the trip. And this coming February, we'll be taking 20 more young Orange County couples on a honeymoon Israel trip. We convene the community around the most important issues we all face. For example, the topic of Israel, formerly united Jews as a people, but now it is one of the most divisive issues in our community. Our Federation's Rose Project brought the Hartman Institute's I Engage program to Orange County to help Jews across the political spectrum learn how to talk with each other about Israel, based not on the politics that divide us, but on the Jewish values and texts that we share. We brought this program to Orange County last year, and today, nearly 300 learners are participating in I Engage through 11 congregations. Many of the participating rabbis have shared with us how meaningful this program is for them and how it has opened up Israel conversations they were once hesitant to discuss in their congregations. And in fact, one rabbi recently told us that this material is the most important thing he is doing with his congregation this year. Another important issue we bring people together around is in anti-Semitism, which many of you know is on the rise here in our backyards. We had 2 questions submitted for tonight regarding what we are doing as an organization to fight anti-Semitism and to educate our children about how to handle a situation if it arises. After some key anti-Semitic incidents involving students in Orange County, our leadership brought together more than 50 teenagers and parents from Orange County for an important conversation about anti-Semitism in partnership with the ADL. Teens and parents were given the opportunity to share challenges they face in their schools and to hear how others dealt with similar issues, as well as learning about resources for combating anti-Semitism. This program launches an ongoing series for students and their families that will begin in 2020. And this is just one of the programs we are doing to help students and teachers understand and stand up to anti-Semitism. We power Jewish community in Orange County through your philanthropy. It is the commitment of our donors each year that is made to the Jewish community that makes it possible for us to offer not only our own Jewish programming and social services, but to also support Jewish community organizations with funding for their programs. We are so grateful to all of our donors, and I want to give a special thanks to our major donor families and individuals, and those are families who make gifts of $10,000 and above, including our Joshua Society members who make their gifts specifically unrestricted to the annual campaign, and you can see that there's been a 6% growth since last year. Our Women's Philanthropy Lions of Judah, our group of women committed to $5,000 plus, have had a 5% growth since last year. Our Solomon Society, the new L'Chaim Club, make commitments of 5,000 or more, and they just introduced it this year and had a whopping and exciting 32% growth from last year in terms of numbers. Our National Young Leadership Cabinet are comprised of young adults aged 30 to 45, each making their own gift of $5,000 or more each year for 5 years to our annual campaign. This group grew from 1 to 4 participants this past year. And our Ben Gurion Society, the young adults from 21 to 45 who make gifts of $1,000 or more, they experienced growth of 25%. So I really want to say kol hakavod to all, and especially to our young adults in this community who are by far really reaching and making a difference. So thank you. Why not? A little round of applause to everyone. There's a very special person. Blossom couldn't be here this evening, but I really want to publicly thank Blossom Siegel. She's a pillar of the Orange County Jewish community, and she recently established the Blossom Siegel Family Special Endowment Fund. And this fund will support, on an annual basis, in perpetuity, our next generation of young adults to ensure that the future leaders of this community are engaged in Jewish life and can develop their leadership skills. Thank you, Blossom. And of course, we thank all the donors who have joined our Legacy Circle. There are many people here who have, you can see their, on their name tags, it says Legacy Circle. So thank you to everybody who has one and who has made a commitment to the future of our community through your planned giving. So thank you. And I also want to give a shout out to our 2019 honorees. So each year, Jewish Federation gives awards to 3 very deserving honorees at our annual Women's Voices Luncheon, which has been named one of Orange County Business Journal's top 5 charity luncheons every year since 2014. We presented the first ever Above and Beyond Award to Blossom Siegel for lifetime achievement in strengthening Jewish community. And in October, Solomon Society honored Stephen Kaufman as their Mensch of the Year. And Steve has been active with Solomon Society since the beginning and is a longtime leader with the Jewish Federation, most recently serving on our board as vice chair for nominations and governance. And at this fall's Celebrate event for our Next Gen Young Adult group, Alexandra Mars, Allie, was awarded the Jewish Federation's Blossom Siegel Next Gen Leadership Award for her service. She has demonstrated outstanding commitment as a next-gen volunteer, philanthropist, and leader in our community, as well as in her current position of Director of Special Events on our staff. And while it is bittersweet, I want to congratulate our devoted Director of Community Philanthropy, Doris Jacobson, on her upcoming retirement. There's Doris. Wow. Doris has served us for 14 years, and during that time has inspired so many of our Solomon Society men in their leadership. And Doris, you will be missed. So although 2019 has been a challenging year, it has also been a year with a lot to celebrate. And the reason for celebration is your commitment to our community. I am honored to be leading this organization for what it has accomplished with your support, for its resilience in the face of challenge, and for all that we will accomplish together in the future. I'd like to now invite our board chair, Lori Schwartz, back to the stage to honor our outgoing board members. Thank you.
It is now my privilege to acknowledge some extraordinary leaders at Jewish Federation and Family Services. The members of our board of directors have taken on some significant challenges this year and have done so with diligence, positivity, and a commitment to the future of our organization. I'd like to thank them personally and on behalf of Jewish Federation and Family Services for all their skills, intelligence, and thoughtfulness that they brought to the board's decision-making, problem-solving, and planning this year, which was a lot. We had a lot of extra meetings, which I know was a challenge also. We are fortunate that some of these leaders are remaining on the board next year, and when we conduct the board's elections and installation, we'll acknowledge them at that time. At this time, I'd like to recognize and thank our 7 outgoing board members, Yael Aronoff, Frank Ellis, Jonathan Gerber, Bernie Labowitz, Susan Levenstein, Deborah Simoneau, and Dr. James M. Weiss. Each of you come to the board with different backgrounds, strengths, and perspectives, and have made your own contributions through your board service. One thing all of you have in common, as do all of our board members and volunteer leaders, is extraordinary commitment to our community. As I call your name, please join me on the stage, and once you receive your award, if you'll just stand to the side, we'll be ready for taking pictures. Bernie Labowitz has served our board for 8 years and our finance committee for 5 years. He was also the founding co-chair of the Network, a group that brought together business owners and professionals for networking, business building, and support. Bernie was a member of our former Real Estate Council and is still a strong leader and active member of Solomon Society. He is often president of the Jewish Federation Family Service offices and always has a smile for the staff members, which I think they look forward to. Get on this side so I can get a picture. Susan Levenstein has served the Jewish Federation Family Services for 6 years, our finance committee for 7 years, and has held the role of treasurer for 2 years. Although her term on the board is ending, she will continue to serve on our audit committee. And it's a very important place to have someone. Thank you. We need a lot of good people on our audit committee. Deborah Simoneau has served on our board of directors for 8 years. She has been a member of our Planning and Funding Council, our Finance Committee, and served on the Family Philanthropy Committee, which brought together families to pass Jewish values of Tikkun Olam and tzedakah through their actions with their children. Come on down, as they say. Thank you. We'll move this way so that you can get a good picture. Dr. James M. Weiss. Jim has served on the board of directors for the past 2 years, as well as serving as secretary on the board in the secretary board in 2016 during a previous 8 years on the board service. He's also co-chair for our Rose Council, which develops strategies and programs that empower the community around today's pressing issues of anti-Semitism and attempts to delegitimize Israel, as well as opportunities for Israel education and advocacy. A few board members were not able to join us tonight, but we want to recognize them. Yael Aronoff has provided 8 years of dedicated service to the Jewish Federation Family Service, including her role as board secretary in 2017 and 18. She also donated her time and talents to our governance committee and previously served on the Family Philanthropy Committee. Frank Ellis has held a variety of leadership roles with Jewish Federation Family Services, starting out as a key leader on our Young Leadership Committee for adults ages 25 to 45, which is now called Next Gen. He's also been an active member of our campaign cabinet and was a founding member and remains very active in Solomon Society. In fact, in 2012, Frank was honored by the Solomon Society as their Mensch of the Year. Jonathan Gerber has served on our Jewish Federation Family Services Board of Directors for 2 years. He also was an active member of Next Gen Committee and served as Next Gen's Vice Chair of Leadership and Engagement in 2016 and 17. Thank you all for your years of service and commitment in supporting the work of Jewish Federation and Family Services of Orange County. Your contributions will continue to make an impact on our community. On behalf of Jewish Federation and Family Services, thank you to our outgoing board members and for their service. Thank you. At this time, I'd like to invite to the stage Rabbi Rick Steinberg, Senior Rabbi at Congregation Shir HaMa'alot. That's a beautiful picture. My rabbi, Rabbi Steinberg, Rick, has accompanied me on events like this, such as tonight, throughout my leadership path at Jewish Federation and Family Services. I want to thank you for your support and guidance.
Stay right here. This is about you. Good evening, everyone. You, Lori, have worked so hard and so diligently on behalf of this community. There are really not enough words to express our gratitude, so I'll do the rabbi thing and offer words of blessing as a way of demonstrating our overwhelming appreciation. Yivarechecha Adonai v'yishmarecha. You sustained and nourished us with sacred wisdom and in the best tradition of our people, giving of yourself for the betterment of others, and so may God bless you and keep you. Ye'er Adonai panav elecha v'yichuneka. You led us always with grace and with integrity to bring the light of justice and compassion of God's broken world, to God's broken world. And so may God's face shine upon you, and may God always be gracious to you. Yisa Adonai panav elecha v'yasem lecha shalom. Your leadership was centered on respect and kindness, Jewish values and lessons. You helped us elevate our consciousness and focus on doing the right thing even when it was hard. We thank you for your dedication to our community, and so may God lift up your heart and grant you wholeness, fulfillment, and peace, and less meetings. Amen.
Thank you.
Mazel tov.
So, Lori, here we go. As a symbol of our gratitude for your dedication to our Jewish Federation of Family Services, I want to present to you this very special gift. It's a beautiful, one-of-a-kind piece of artwork, and the story behind it I shared a little bit earlier, but it was artwork created by the Ukrainian-born artist and Holocaust survivor, Mila Gachman, who lives here locally. And Mila, along with the other local survivors, showed her artwork in the art show that we held in Laguna Woods. And this piece had a special plaque that reads, I'm going to read it from here because I can't see it there. With profound gratitude for your inspired leadership as chair of the Board of Directors 2017 to 2019. So this very special piece is from you, from all of us to you. And to especially thank you for, as Rick said, for your grace, for your leadership, for your strength to have been with us these years. Thank you, and I know you'll continue to be by our side.
Thank you. Thank you very much. And I think the important thing is less meetings. Thank you very much.
Now I'd like to welcome Michael Shapiro to the stage for our 2019 financial report.
Good evening, everyone. Thanks for coming. So this part's definitely going to be about the challenge. Although you may have read or attended community meetings regarding this, Let me share with you some financial details of the challenge we've been facing as an organization. The basic fact is that from 2016 to 2018, our organization spent in excess of its general funds raised. We discovered that due to inadequate controls related to accounting for restricted donations, we used some of the cash available in our restricted funds for maintaining community programs that were not intended to be paid for by those funds. When our organization became aware of the issue, we brought in Grobstein Teeple, a public accounting and consulting firm, to assist in understanding the root cause and extent of the improper spending of restricted donations and the accumulation of debt. In performing these services, I want to stress the firm found no evidence of fraud, theft, or other illegal conduct. They concluded that while some of the money was spent in ways that were inconsistent with the donor's intentions, the restricted donations were spent on legitimate expenses related to the organization's mission. Nevertheless, the deficit spending amounted to approximately $3.5 million, which is 13% of our expenses during that period. Of the $3.5 million, approximately $2 million relates to cash from restricted funds that was used to fund operations, and another $1.5 million of debt was accumulated that is owed to banks, private loans, and vendors. So where are we now? Well, in addition to soliciting funds through a second line campaign in effort to cover the $3.5 million obligation, over the past year, we have made the following 4 key changes to correct the current situation and to ensure that it will never happen again. First, we have strengthened internal financial oversight, including instituting new accounting procedures, restructuring staff, strengthening lay leadership, and bringing on a new public accounting firm to audit our financial statements. Furthermore, we established separate bank accounts for restricted and unrestricted funds, and are also implementing more effective use of our robust accounting software as a single source of managing and reporting on both restricted and unrestricted funds. Last but certainly not least, we are conducting a search for the key role of CFO. Number 2, we've created more transparency in public reporting of our finances by restating our audited financial statements to more clearly reflect the restricted fund balances. Number 3, we have reduced expenses by building on what Arlene mentioned, by closing or transitioning programs that were not uniquely mission aligned and whose services could be provided by other local organizations. We made the hard decision to reduce staff by 42%, from 64 employees to 37, primarily in the area of the above program closures. The effect is that actual expenses for the first 9 months of this year are $1.3 million lower than for the same period last year, of which $558,000 is an improvement at the unrestricted level. Before this year, we estimate that we were overspending our unrestricted funds by $100,000 per month. So we would have liked to have seen a larger improvement for these past 9 months. However, we had to spend several $100,000 of extra dollars on outside financial consultants to address our issue. We will update you when the final figures for the year are available. But absent the extra dollars we are spending on rebuilding our financial department, we do believe that we are operating our unrestricted account at approximately a break-even level. And number 4, going forward, we have set the framework for a 2020 budget with capacity to begin reimbursement of the restricted funds. As board treasurer, I want to thank you for your support during this very challenging time. But I think we've done a lot in the past year. There's plenty of work going forward, but I'm confident with the support of yourselves and the hard work of staff and the board, we will get there. You will have the opportunity to ask any questions you may have during our Q&A session after our board election and installation. And I want to convey that additionally, I will stay afterward to answer any questions. Thank you for coming tonight.
I'd now like to invite slated 2020 Board Chair Stephen Gordon and Arlene Miller to the stage for our fireside chat.
All right. Okay, the mics are working. Wonderful. Good. So, Stephen, really thrilled to have you here with us tonight and to have this opportunity in front of this audience. I think you'll agree that we've got a full house here. And there's a lot, I know, a lot of questions that everyone wants answered. So we had many submissions of questions. And what I really want to start with, I had an opportunity to speak with Stephen. Our board has had an opportunity to hear from Stephen. And I would love for all of you to hear some of this as well. So I'm going to start with the first question, Stephen, which is why? Why step up? Why now? Please
Okay,
share.
well, first, I could say maybe I need to go see a psychiatrist, and no, but I want to start out by first thanking everybody for being here. This is wonderful. I think we have about 125, 150 people tonight, and that's fantastic to be able to bring together and convene the community this way. Second, and maybe first, and for those of you who haven't had this degree of interaction with Doris, and Doris, you hear me thank you and say this a number of times, but you got a standing ovation, so I don't want that to go by. When I started becoming more active with the organization, whether it was through Solomon Society, whether it was through the L'Chaim Club, whether it was directly through Federation, Doris, who I've known for many, many years, and my wife has known for many years, I viewed Doris as this unbelievable secret weapon that exists within Federation. And whether that's for Federation as what I'll call kind of the parent company, or whether it is the subsidiary organizations, divisions, Doris is a diamond within the organization. And when I did raise my hand and say I wanted to step up and be involved, I had in mind that we would have Doris as this incredibly valuable weapon going forward, and that we could have, that we can make a major impact in the community leveraging Doris's passion and talent. And a few weeks later, maybe a month later, Doris invited a few of us to lunch or for drinks, Doris. And Doris said, I just want to let you know I'm leaving the organization and retiring. And that was after I committed to doing this. So why? I'm not going to reconsider, but Doris, I do want to say thank you. You've been absolutely amazing, and I'm very concerned because I don't know that this organization is going to, you're not replaceable. Not at all. So to the question of why, when I think about impactful Jewish events in my life, Jewish moments in my life, I think of the Jewish Federation in New York City. I'm from New York and lived in New York most of my adult life. Now that I'm 57, I'm having trouble figuring out when most transitions to I've lived in California longer. But I was exposed to the Wall Street division of the Jewish Federation, which was absolutely incredible. Just that division alone was significant in terms of passionate people committed to Jewish community, to giving back to Jewish community. And I was overwhelmed by how large that group was in New York. Second, most impactful, and these are all out of order, and these were just random thoughts, was 9/11. Right, so I worked on the 104th floor of Two World Trade for many, many years, and I lost 66 friends on 9/11, many of whom were Jewish. And I think that's something that doesn't get often said. We talk about the thousands of people who were lost that day, but many of them were actually Jewish. And when you think about the loss in the World Trade Center, a huge percentage of those people were Jewish. They were dear friends of mine, mentors of mine, people who had a huge impact on my young life. And we all know as we get older, it becomes harder to make friends. And I do not have the number of friends that I had when I lived in New York. Next would be my marriage to Madeline. And for those of you who know who Madeline is, Madeline Gordon, formerly Madeline Blinder, has always been very active in the Jewish community. And for those of you who don't know, she was the first woman to graduate from the Hebrew Academy in Westminster. And I thank her for a lot of the Jewish feeling that I have in my commitment to community. So when Madeline asked me also, why are you doing this? Right? I said to her, it's her fault for impacting me this way. And that question, it was kind of a rhetorical question. Then the birth of both Madison and Sophia, and going through the JCC upbringing and Tarbut V'Torah, and then their bat mitzvahs, and this community, the impact that it had on my daughters, and their involvement in Maccabi and Maccabiah, and traveling to Israel and traveling all around the country with Jewish kids. And the friendships that they've made through that have lasted and endured. Now they're 23 and 27, and they still have those friendships. That was very meaningful to me. Then the building of the JCC. Ralph, you're here somewhere? Ralph Stern? All right, so Ralph, Ralph, I've always viewed as a tremendous example for this community. And I remember walking up to you, Ralph, and this was because the example that you set in this community and how impactful and how passionately you believed in this community. And everywhere I went, you were there. And all sorts of events and causes, you were passionately committed to stepping up and being involved. I remember walking up to you, and you probably recall this evening, the building of the JCC was just an idea, a dream, a vision. And it took people deciding that it mattered, that it needed to exist, that this community needed this campus, that it needed this JCC for the Jews in the community, all ages. And I remember walking up to you that evening. You didn't have to solicit me. I came to you and said, I'll commit X amount to building the JCC. And that was a very meaningful moment for me. And I remember looking back at Madeline. I had been working way too many hours at that gap of time. I was going through an acquisition of a bank, had been working through the night, and turned to Madeline and kind of broke down. So I try to set the example of actually going to the gym here, the Gordon Foundation gym, and I pull out my pass and I beep my way in, and I take great pride in the JCC in our community. And then there was the rebuilding, Rick, of Shir HaMalot, and you and I and others, some of us worked very closely together in the building of Shir HaMalot, and this Jewish community is in our souls, right? And the rebuilding, the expansion of the temple has meant a lot. And now Federation. So Madeline has been a lion as a result of a few people in the community approaching her many years ago. So Blossom Siegel, Ruth Lobel, Bunny Malden, all of them asking her to go to lunch, sitting down with her, and explaining to her the importance of Federation. This was over 20 years ago. And the importance of, what is it to be a lion? Why does that matter? And Madeline has been a lion, I believe, for about 20 years. And she has been in my ear a lot as we've been developing L'Chaim Club and expanding Solomon Society and trying to develop what is L'Chaim Club, what does it mean, and why is it that Lion, that's been around forever, is something that sustains the test of time, and yet, L'Chaim, we talked about this 36% growth. And Nadine, I looked at you and I said, yeah, but we started from zero only a couple years ago, so the numbers are distorted. All right, so we have a numerator-denominator advantage. Right? But with Federation going through the challenges that it's going through today, the financial challenges, we heard all the good. We heard all the good that it's doing in the community. But in order to be able to continue doing good, this organization needs to exist. And there are some people in the community who are asking, what is the purpose of Federation? Does it need to exist? Is it sustainable? Is it viable? Is it relevant? And And Madeline and I had a lot of discussion about this, and maybe others in the community have had the exact same discussion at home. Mine has been a little bit painful, right? Madeline, she and I are both Scorpios. We're pretty black and white and direct, and she said to me, so, because I said I wanted to make a commitment, a financial commitment to Federation, a large financial commitment. And she said, but are we maybe sending good money, committing good money to bad? And I said to her, it might be, I'm not sure. I want to figure it out. I want to find out. I'm committed to finding out. But the other side of the coin is if you don't do it, this is what I was saying to her, if we don't do it, then it's a very binary decision. Then you're making a decision that maybe Federation will cease to exist in Orange County, the 6th largest county in the US by populace. Now, there's all sorts of speculation around, is it 100,000 Jews in Orange County? Is it 90,000 Jews? Like, what's the number? But can the 6th largest county in the US not have a federation? And I don't believe that decision should be no. I strongly believe that federation must exist in this county. Now, is it as powerful as it could be? And meaningful as it could be, impactful as it could be? Absolutely not, right? When I go to Los Angeles, I was invited to a Real Estate Federation event in LA in the Santa Monica hangar, and this was about a year ago, and 2,500 Jews showed up. Right? We have our annual meeting, 125 show up. Solomon Society event that evening, how many show up? 300? All right. I go to just some event, not the biggest event of the year, just some event, and 2,500 Jews show up. Now, I've been told over the years when a whole group of us used to sit down, and a lot of them are slated as new directors to come onto the board potentially, and we used to have our own separate meetings, and they weren't part of Federation, and we used to discuss what I was just talking about, 2,500 Jews showing up, and here we don't have that happen. And I was told we're never going to have that type of commitment in Orange County. It's a newer county, it's younger population, it's different, and I don't accept that. Right? I think Federation must exist. We've got challenges, we've got a big problem, and but I think it can be fixed.
Great. Thank you, Stephen. Thanks for taking us on that journey and sharing your story, why this is so important and what you see as the opportunity. Can you share a little bit about kind of next year looking forward, some of the priorities that you'd like to put on the table?
Sure. Does everybody have this card at their, it's on the wall, on the screen? I don't want to turn around. Okay, so I do need my glasses. All right, so we just went through this process. Obviously, I'm not on the board yet, but for the last 3 months, I've been very, very actively diving in, doing my due diligence, trying to get my arms around what's really going on in the organization, get my arms around the financials, try to make sense of it, and try to figure out where the real problem is, because it's a little amorphous. You hear a lot of words you're not used to hearing, like fund accounting. You're used to hearing restricted, unrestricted. Bottom line is, we went through a process to come up with what I believe need to be the near-term priorities. So if you break it into short-term, intermediate, and long, there are a lot of amazing things that this organization does, a lot of things that need ongoing attention, but some of those things are long-term priorities. I want to paint a picture so that everybody can appreciate where the organization really stands financially, and with complete, all due respect to the passion of everybody who's been involved. And I do genuinely believe that the board, as it stands today and as it has been over the last few years, their hearts are all in the right place. They're very committed to community, and really care a lot about being impactful in community. But to put all of this really in perspective, Arlene, I went over some cash flow numbers with you in the last handful of days, and cash on hand, the organization had roughly $114,000 on hand Thursday going into Friday payroll, pay $84,000 of payroll, it has roughly $32,000 in cash left. Okay? So there's a cash burn that goes on in the organization. There's a massive liquidity problem in the organization. There's an overhead problem in the organization. There's a budgetary problem in the organization, and it goes way beyond just the debt. Okay? So if you all choose tonight, there's a vote tonight? All right, so if I actually do become board chair, what I promise you from this board is there's going to be constant communication, there's going to be open communication, there's going to be open dialogue. It's not just going to be, periodic. Right? We're going to be very transparent, and the organization has more, again, than the $3.5 million debt problem. Right? The $3.5 million that was defined as being broken into $2 million and $1.5 million. I'll go over when we go into some of the questions. There's a question as to where we currently stand. But creating sustainable financial solvency in the organization is the number one priority above and beyond everything else. Because, and my philosophy is, those of you who know who I am, it's in my blood. I've run public companies, I buy banks, I build banks. I don't know how to not run something corporate. And so I'm a little different that way. But I strongly believe that the organization's, what it needs to do is it needs to run as a business. The business that we're in happens to be doing good in the community. And at Opus, I had created the Opus Community Foundation, and we gave probably 800 grants over the course of 8 years to organizations, philanthropic organizations doing good up and down the entire West Coast. Right? But I really love those organizations that were run well, where I knew that they were financially being managed properly, that the money that we were giving to the organization was going to be going to the cause, the good, the purpose that we were making that grant to. And we made sure that the organization that we were giving money to actually was financially responsible and provided us with updated financials annually. And we were disciplined around site visits and having presentations given to us. And I think that the financial solvency issue here comes down to also having a lot of really good fiscal discipline that goes above and beyond. So there's a cultural evolution that I think the organization needs to go through. Right? Number 2 priority, but it goes hand in hand with number 1, and there are a handful of us on a committee that are working on this, is finding a CFO for the organization. And the CFO cannot be an average CFO, a mediocre CFO. It needs to be a top-notch CFO, but one that we can afford as an organization. And right now, the organization cannot afford a lot of luxuries. And part of the reason why I say that we need a CFO and not a director of finance or accounting or anything, but a true CFO, is right now there is, while it's slated for some very strong business people to be coming onto the board of directors, there is, I think, a tremendous amount of work that has to be done or that falls on the responsibility of the board of directors, as I've seen so far, to be playing the role of CFO. And when we start asking a lot of forensic financial type of questions, it's very hard to get really good solid data and really good solid answers. So we need to be able to depend on a strong CFO, somebody who's accountable, hired by the organization, paid by the organization, not an outside consulting firm, not an outside accounting firm, somebody who lives and breathes the organization's numbers and performance and is held to that accountability. 3, this was interesting. So Ralph Stern, we were at a meeting, and Ralph asked the question in really a simple way, as clearly and simple as Ralph will tend to ask. It's almost like from the mouths of babes. I don't know when you last heard that, Ralph, the mouths of babes from Ralph. But But he asked a simple question: what is the purpose of federation? And then I also had that same conversation, and it's very hard for one to articulate what the purpose is of Jewish Federation, I guess now Jewish Federation of Orange County. And I think that impacted Madeline and I in decisions that we were making to give grants to the organization. So directly when I speak to that, we've given millions of dollars to organizations in this community that were able to very tangibly, clearly articulate what their purpose was, and we could see it, we could understand it, we could breathe it, and whether that's Shur HaMalot or other organizations, including Sage Hill, it impacted our belief in the organization and how much we supported it. Federation has always been this kind of amorphous, vague thing that it's hard for us to understand what it does, what its purpose is. So we think very strongly we need to define and articulate exactly what the purpose of Federation is, who we are, what we do, what our vision is, what our mission is, and not have it be, this we're there to support everybody and the country and Israel. I mean, it's when I listen to what the mission is, it isn't really where we need to be in terms of, I think, articulating clearly a consensus that's representative of the impact that we want to be able to have. Regaining the trust of our community. I think there are a number of things that we must do, but trust is broken down, and the trust needs to be rebuilt. And there are some who are supportive of the organization because they always have been, and they're amazing people, and they just believe in no matter what supporting the organization. There are those who are angry. There are those who feel betrayed. There are those who feel mixed. And it's actually caused infighting within families and disagreement inside of families. Madeline and I had our disagreements over it. And that needs to be rebuilt. This community is not large enough to have trust breakdown within the Jewish community. There aren't enough of us. I'd like to find ways to galvanize the community and bring this together and create greater strength and leverage, as opposed to right now it's in transition. And I think we can fix that and change that. Increase grant making as a percentage of revenue. So when I looked at past financials, I've looked at the last 3 years of financials, and I've now looked deeply into the proposed draft 2020 budget, and I was pretty surprised to see, and I don't know if any of you are aware of this or not, but if we use a number of roughly, as opposed to over 6 million of revenue, let's use a number more like 5.5 million of revenue. Well, and revenue in this equation, in this income statement, really is donor, let's call it donor money, grants, other sources of monies that come into the organization. In last year, it was roughly 500,000 that went out in terms of grants. And so that falls into the expense side of the equation, but 500,000 of the 5.5 million actually got granted out back into organizations, agencies, community, et cetera. So I think that doesn't feel right to me. I think that we should be more impactful in the community. And I think we also have a major overhead problem, because of the 5.5 million, there is right now, even after all the salary cuts and employee reductions, salary plus benefits plus payroll tax, so let's call that total compensation, runs roughly 56% of total revenues. Right? That means that of every dollar, every $100, every $1,000 given to the organization, 56 cents of the dollar is going to pay salaries, payroll tax, benefits. Right? And so something feels very broken in the organization from an overhead structure standpoint. So getting the financials in position to be able to be more impactful back into the community, I think is a very, very high priority. I've learned over the last month how critically important this next item is, which is becoming the central hub to strengthen relationships within local agencies, organizations, and the community, and to break down silos, so community relations. I think there is a tremendous opportunity to, rather than all of these organizations working separately, right, to bring leaders together of all the organizations and figure out how we can become a stronger Jewish community, how we can leverage the strengths of the organizations, how maybe we can get to maybe where we don't have a lot of redundancy across all the organizations, where everybody's out there grant writing, everybody's got their finance departments, everybody's got their everything, because everyone in the Jewish community has to have their own. Right? But are we a large enough Jewish community to operate that way? I think we proved in this community, the community back years ago wasn't large enough to have both a tarbut and a morashah. And I'd hate to see more of that happen. I'd rather find a way to galvanize all of this within the community and have all of us working together and break down the silos. In addition to that, and this may be a little controversial, and we've had some discussions around this, I think that Lisa Armoni and what is named the Rose Project, which if we look structurally what we have a parent organization called the Jewish Federation, and we have a subsidiary organization called Rose Project, which operates inside of the Jewish Federation umbrella, and it's a community relations arm of the organization. I think there's a very powerful piece of the puzzle there. I think Lisa is incredible, and I think there's an opportunity to broaden and strengthen what goes on inside of Lisa's world and make that a very, very strong community relations division within Federation as opposed to a very specific silo. So I think there's opportunity to leverage the strengths that exist within the organization and have much stronger community relation, from Federation, leading Federation as the parent hub of the community. And then marketing our Jewish Federation brand. And some of these things, seem to fall way down below on the list, in my mind, than number one, creating financial solvency, right? But a lot of people don't really think of Federation. They don't really know what Federation does, and I think that's a PR issue. It's a marketing issue, and I think marketing the Federation brand at some point in here, when we have some money to do so, but not right this moment. But maybe part of that is actually, I remember when I bought the bank that launched Opus, and our chief marketing officer, who was used to having a $350 million a year marketing budget at what was Washington Mutual. And when he came to me and he wanted to work with me, he said, "What's my budget?" And I said, "0." And I said, "I'll fund good ideas, but I'm not giving you a budget." And he looked at the first meeting that we had with all the new employees of the organization, including the employees of the bank we just bought. He had everybody stand up and introduce themselves to one another. Rick, a lot like what you do at Shir Hamalot. And everybody turned around and introduced themselves to one another and shook hands. And then they looked back to the stage, and the chief marketing officer said, "You've now met the marketing department." Right? We are the marketing department of this organization. If we believe in Federation, we need to talk about Federation. We need to talk it up. We need to, to get to where it is, really meaningful in this community. Increasing fundraising philanthropy revenues. So I don't necessarily want tonight to be about that at all. Tonight is not an ask night. I think Federation has a lot of work to do financially, before it has earned the right to go out in the community with its hand open saying, "We need money." Right? And we'd like people to step up and give money to the organization. Because I think, a lot like, and I had this conversation with members of the finance committee, as well as some others, who were trying to decide when this matter, the financial matter, should be discussed with the community. And I said it must be discussed immediately with the community. The community must know. There must be open communication, transparency. And I said, I know how it works in my business, running a public company. If I go out and raise money and I'm not giving full disclosure to shareholders, and everybody in this community is our shareholders of Federation. This is your Federation, right? You are the shareholders of the organization, and if there isn't full disclosure in my business, that's securities fraud. And it's very defined, I go to prison. So this organization, at some point along the way, is going to be very focused on increasing fundraising and philanthropy, so the revenues that come into the organization. But we must get to where we're financially sound. So those are the highest priorities of the organization, and we're going to be executing on these. Part of that is also going to mean, part of that is also going to mean that I'm going to make sure that we're communicating quarterly back to everybody on how we're progressing against these priorities, where we stand on the execution of every single one of these, and we're going to be held to these and live up to them and be held accountable, to what we're representing as being what we're after getting done in the organization.
Great, Stephen. Thank you so much for sharing that with all of us. So now it's time to really make this official. And I'd like to invite Rabbi Rick Steinberg back to the stage for our board election and installation.
Thank you, Stephen, very much. I have the distinct honor of being the rabbi for our outgoing chair and for our incoming chair, and as such, I serve tonight as the installing officer for the whole new board. The new board is charged with the large task of bringing JFFS, now Jewish Federation of Orange County, to its full potential. Our community is blessed to have so many capable people to lead this charge, particularly Stephen, as you have so beautifully articulated tonight already, Stephen. You are a person of great depth, whose heart is in the right place, whose mind is keen, and who we all know whose leadership will be transformative. Stephen and his wife Madeline have been ardent supporters of our Jewish community for more than 2 decades. They have made an impact time and again. This philanthropy comes from the deepest part of their Jewish souls, as they understand that tzedakah is more than just charity. The root for the word tzedakah means to do the right thing. This new role for Stephen is in keeping with that mandate, doing the right thing by stepping up and leading. Stephen, your leadership will bring new eyes and new direction to this institution, and such energy from you comes from your good neshama, the righteous soul you bring to this moment. I know that you are a passionate Jew who wants the very best for our Orange County Jewish community and for Jews all over the world. The great historian Doris Kearns Goodwin, in her book Leadership in Turbulent Times, wrote, "More and more, it seems to me that about the best thing in life is to have a piece of work worth doing and then do it well." Stephen, you and your whole board, this is a piece of work worth doing, and I am confident you will do it very well. To the staff of JFFS and to Arlene in particular, thank you for your continued dedication and hard work on behalf of our community. Your energy and your devotion to the cause is seen, appreciated, and recognized. I thank you very much as well. And so, I'd like to invite the following members to the stage for election to the positions of board officers. Stephen H. Gordon, Chair of the Board. Heather Klein, please come forward. Heather Klein, Vice Chair of the Board. Laurie Schwartz, Immediate Past President. Stuart Wolf, Secretary. And Barry Aronoff, Treasurer. All those in favor of electing these 5 officers for the positions stated, please raise your right hand. Please keep your hands raised as we collect a count for the record. You can vote for yourselves. Going once, going. You may put your hands down. All opposed? Any abstentions? By the power vested in me as installing officer, I hereby and with great pleasure install you as board officers of Jewish Federation and Family Services of Orange County, beginning your term on January 1, 2020. Congratulations. Guys, just stay right here. Up, stand over there, Kathleen says. Thank you. Mazel tov, congratulations. Congratulations. It was close vote. Careful what you wish for. Now I'd like to introduce the directors who are proposed for election to serve a 2-year term from January 1, 2020 through December 31st, 2021. When I call your name, please join on the stage. Barry Aronoff, Kenny Beard, Nadine Durbach, Stephen H. Gordon, Adam Miller, also serving as our board parliamentarian, Lori Schwartz, Scott Siegel, Michael Stoll, David S. Weinberg, who could not be with us tonight, and Stuart B. Wolf, and Sam Wyman. All those in favor of electing these directors to the Board of Jewish Federation and Family Service for a 2-year term ending December 31st, 2001, please raise your hand. Again, please keep your hands raised as we collect a count for the record.
You guys can be honest.
Yeah, you get to vote, of course. You can vote for yourselves. Please put your hands down. Thank you so much. All opposed? Any abstentions? Seeing none, by the power vested in me as the installing officer, I hereby and with great pleasure install you as directors of Jewish Federation and Family Services of Orange County. Mazel tov, congratulations. Congratulations. I'm good. Nice to see you. Thank you. Now I'd like to call upon the board members who will be remaining for a second year of their term, which began January 1st, 2019 and ends December 31st, 2020. Rabbi Dovid Eliezri, Roger F. Friedman, Mark Gorelik, Gwen Gluckman, Heather Klein, Eric Kramer, and Lori Resnick, Michael Shapiro, and Rabbi Nico Sokolovsky was not able to attend tonight. Come right up here. Although no vote is required, you are deserving of thanks. You are deserving of thanks and our appreciation, and certainly deserve a round of applause from this community. Thank you for all you do. Thank you guys very much. Thank you very much. You're welcome. And finally, board member emeritus is an honorary designation given to a former board member or board members to recognize their long and faithful service to this organization and the wisdom and advice they share. Board members emeritus are Dr. Hal Kravitz and Blossom Siegel. Is Dr. Kravitz here? No. Is Dr. Kravitz here? Nope. Neither of them could be here, but they are beloved by our community, and we send them our love and appreciation. Let's give them a big round of applause. It says, Rabbi Rick, 1-minute custom closing. My closing is simply this. It's an honor to be part of this community and to work on its behalf. And together we stand with one another in times of challenge, and together we will share the success as well. Thank you all very much, and have a great night, but we're not done yet. It's with lots of pleasure I welcome back to the Fireside Chat Stephen H. Gordon and Arlene Miller to continue this conversation with your questions.
Stephen, you're in. Unanimous. Mazel tov.
No, it's really going to be a collective effort, and we all look forward to working together on your behalf, and representing the hopes and vision that you may have for the organization.
Great. So there were a number of questions submitted, and I'll be asking Stephen to answer them as we go along this evening. So the first question for Stephen is, what is the status of the 2.8 million shortfall that we notified the community about during the high holidays?
Okay, so there are a few different numbers. There's what was 3.5 million, and that's broken down as 1.5 million of near term that absolutely must be addressed, and then there's an additional 2 million of debt that we're looking at addressing potentially in a different way. So the 1.5 million, which is near term, that you heard Michael describe as being bank loans, money that is due to restricted funds, and vendors, third parties that the organization has deferred paying. So when I say deferred paying, meaning saying to a vendor, I'm not going to pay you right now, I'll pay you later. And that culture of operation needs to change. Vendors deserve to be paid, for the work that they've done, et cetera. So where we stand is the 1.5 million is down to about 1.1 million roughly right now, 1,150,000-ish. And a few of us have committed, and some of this was subject to, and this reminds me of, when, like in a company, when a company is potentially going to be invested in by private equity will often say, I'll make the investment, but I want to be in the board, to make sure that the investment is handled properly. And so some of us have committed to putting up money to, granting money to the organization to address some of the debt. So where we stand on that is Madeline and I and the Gordon Foundation, we've committed $200,000 to the organization. And I'm not at liberty to say the other names, but that number right now is at about 450,000 that is committed to against that 1.5 million number that's down to 1,150,000. So if I do the math right, that brings it down to around 650,000, 700,000 remaining, once we make those payments. And those aren't payments to be made over time. They're payments that just will be paid to the organization and come in. But part of that was making sure that none of us felt good about the fiscal operations of the organization. So, so I said that I want to be on the board, and Arlene was pretty surprised. And then one day I said, I actually want to be chair of the board, and she looked at me in shock. Right? And then Doris resigned. No, no. So and then a number of people who you've now seen tonight stepped up and said that they want to be on the board and want to be impactful. So where it stands tonight is that also, so that there's belief that we're going to be able to turn this organization around and commitment. There's also 100% commitment from every member of the board of directors that they are going to also put money toward paying down that debt. So I think that's very important. Right? And I think you should expect nothing less. How can we have you all believe in the organization and the viability, the financial viability of the organization, if the board itself did not believe by putting its money where its mouth is? So there's 100% commitment from the board. There's further conversations going on with people in the community to also hopefully have them make a commitment. But my promise to them is that we will also get this place running fiscally properly, because believe me on this when I explain this, that when I say if we pay down all the 1.5 million and pay off the 2 million, that does not solve the problem, right? The place is still burning cash. The overhead is too high, and what I said was a little while ago that right now in the new proposed budget, that salaries, benefits, payroll is 56% of revenues. There are a number of other line items that I think are net need that a bunch of us have been pushing back on pretty hard. And when you add those in, it brings it up to actually about 75% of revenues. And that's a combination of both restricted and unrestricted revenues. So I think the numbers, it's not about fund accounting and it's not about all this other noise that periodically we hear related to this. It's an overhead problem in terms of operations, and that's why the organization has almost no cash left after it pays off, or after it pays its salaries, every 2 weeks. It is 2 weeks, not twice a month, right? It's twice a month?
It's twice a month.
Okay. All right, so we will get this where it needs to be. I've recommended to the board, and again, I'm not on the board yet officially till Jan 1, but I've been, a group of us have been very strongly, actively involved in kind of the day-to-day right now, not all the day-to-day, but some of the higher level stuff. And my recommendation in seeing the draft proposed 2020 budget is that the board absolutely, as it stands, should not approve this budget as it's been proposed. It needs a lot of work, it needs pushing back on, and it needs fiscal discipline, so that's where we stand, overall. So we've got to get it to where the debt is paid down and where we're actually running this thing prudently, where we're able to put money back into the community where it's supposed to go, and not funding overhead entirely. And we also need to get this to where we don't have a liquidity problem constantly, and that's how the organization has been currently running. So I think that can all be fixed, but it's going to take everybody embracing the fiscal discipline that the organization needs to have.
Great, thank you. We have a lot more questions, and in the spirit of transparency, there's some questions that were multiples. We're just going to start one by one. So, Stephen.
Is this the long question?
Yeah, well, I think it's
Multi-part?
2 pages, but I'm going to just start one by one.
Good luck.
What qualifications do you have to serve as chair of the board of directors for a nonprofit?
Okay, so it's a little late. You all voted me in. All right. So hopefully the background and history that I gave tonight supports that when you raised your hand and voted in favor of, that you made a right decision. My wife and I have been, I think, consistently very philanthropic in this community for a long time. I've been on the other side of the table where I chaired the Opus Community Foundation. We had a phenomenal executive director, and we evaluated philanthropic charitable organizations consistently for 8 years, and I think did a phenomenal job at it. We've evaluated very carefully how we give our grants to organizations, and I think the business acumen and discipline that I and many others bring to the table is precisely what this organization needs at this point. And I think that qualifies me.
Thank you. How many committees have you sat on in Jewish organizations in Orange County, and how many board of directors in the Jewish community?
So 100 years ago, I think I was on the board of TVT for about 5 minutes, and longer than 5 minutes, and then I think that's the extent of it, right? But I'm a quick learner. What I don't know, I'm incredibly inquisitive about, and I care a lot. I very much understand that the thinking within a nonprofit is very different than in the for-profit world. But I think that nonprofits need a little infusion and dose of the for-profit thinking. I think that the best organizations that we supported over the years, whether it was through the Gordon Foundation, whether it was directly personally, or whether it was through other foundations like the Opus Community Foundation, I think the best organizations that we supported were those that not only did good, but were actually run extremely well. And, and hopefully I can bring, and the team, those joining can bring that to the table.
Great. For the next question, how many members of the Board of Directors did you know prior to June 2019, and have you attended any Solomon Society events or Next Gen or Network or other programs of the Jewish Federation?
Mind you, these questions, and I think there are many more, are all coming from one person, right? So I think that's fantastic that, that somebody was getting this forensic. I knew some of the members of the board. I knew some of them. Lori, we haven't really known each other, but we've sat 2 rows apart and your husband for years at Shur Hamalot, and we've always said hello. Well, now we're getting to know each other. There are a number of people who are coming on the board who I've known for many, many years. I can tell you that I have now met with probably every member of the board, and I don't have an office these days, and I stopped drinking coffee a long time ago, but all of a sudden I'm meeting everyone for coffee, and my day has gone from being where my calendar is under my control to now it's under the control of Federation and everybody on the board and everybody on committees, and I mean, it's unbelievable. So I want to set up Federation Day. That's one of my missions where, a day a week is hardcore meetings, and then they sprinkle everywhere else. And Lori, you were just saying fewer meetings. I look forward to that at some point, and I'm not even on the board yet. So I'm getting to know everybody on the board. Everybody's uniquely different. Everybody has a different background. Everybody has a different set of experiences and strengths and weaknesses, and I'm trying to figure out where all those strengths and weaknesses leverage off of one another, and who's going to be very passionately, strongly committed time and effort to getting this turned around, and who is on the board who might be less so. So there's a lot of figuring out and a lot of absorbing, but I can tell that everybody's heart is in the right place, and everybody cares a lot about their Judaism, the Judaism in the community, and the need for the organization to exist. I think there are things that we disagree about so far in a pretty healthy way. Believe me when I say that right now in the boardroom there's some tension, and that hopefully we get through the addressing the financial, transitional, and cultural evolution that needs to go on, and then maybe the tension will subside a little bit. But we've got, I think, some healthy tension in the room and debate, and I think that's good.
Yeah, absolutely. I'm going to combine the next 2 questions. How much money did you give to the Jewish Federation in 2019, and how much do you intend to pledge in 2020?
So this is like buying a co-op in New York where you give the full financial disclosure on everything, right? So Madeline has consistently been a Lion, as I said, for I think 20 years, and then I, in the last handful of years, have been a member of Solomon Society, and then with Kenny, where are you, Kenny? With Kenny Beard leading the way, and where's Sam Wyman? Right? We co-chair. I think, Kenny, you might be the chair and we're co-chairs. Is it something like that? We're vice chairs, something like that? All right. So that's of the new L'Chaim Club. And so we're all at the L'Chaim level, which is comparable to Lions. And then on top of that, we've now committed $200,000 to the organization. You get pretty naked when you have these conversations. What?
Thank you. Oh.
Stephen is very articulate, and many of you who don't know him might think he's all talk. He's not. He's a man of action. And he mentioned that he came up to me unsolicited and made a 7-figure gift to the Jewish campus.
I think we owe a lot of thanks to Ralph. Right? One of the discussions that we had a number of us, was that I'll pick on Ralph for a second because he's so wonderful and amazing. Is Sue here also? Hey, Sue. Yeah, both of them. But I remember, as I said before, everywhere you went in the Jewish community, you'd see Ralph and Sue. And all of us, I mean, I'm 57, so what did you say? Next gen is now young adults?
45.
To 45?
45, so.
I mean, that's young adults.
That's
so
young
I'm-
adults,
I'm
'cause
now
emerging
an old
adulthood.
adult, right? But as Ralph and I have talked, and he said, I really don't want to come to that event. I'm not going to be at that event, and I'm really trying not to host things at my home so much anymore. It became clear that some of us are the new elders who need to step up. We're the new leaders in this community, and at 57, I guess we're the elders. Sam, how old are you?
I'm near 52.
No, but I think it's 51? 60. You got, yeah.
We're a young community here in Orange County.
So my point is that it's time for the next wave of people to really step up and be the leaders in the community. We're the new leaders, and I think it's critically important that everybody embrace that you look around at yourselves, the younger ones, and recognize that it's our turn, and we're supposed to do this. Now is the time.
Great. And on this topic, how are you going to represent the entire Jewish community?
We're going to listen. You heard me use words like this is your federation. I used words like you're the shareholders, the owners of federation. I think just as an example, in mid-January, we're doing a 2-day offsite, the board, and the second day is only the board and what I'll call senior management of federation. And that day is devoted to figuring out what is the purpose of federation, what is the mission, the vision, who are we, who do we want to be, what's our role in the community, etc. But we're not doing that until after the first day, when we're inviting in all the leaders, the Jewish leaders in the community, the leaders of the temples, the leaders of the agencies, the leaders of the organizations, the leaders of the schools, and using the rabbis, and using this as an opportunity to hear what they all think the purpose of federation is. What is the purpose? What is the role? What is the vision? And not for the board to debate it, not for the board to respond back, but for us just to listen and capture all that information, all that data, and then the next day, and have a gap of hours between when we can distill all that information and data, and then that next day for us to really have heard the community leaders, and for us to kind of figure out where that fits into our brains and what we think the organization needs to be going forward. I do not want to wait until this amorphous community study comes back and wait until the middle of 2020 in order to hear what the community study says that's being performed by Chapman, that's being paid for by restricted funds committed to that. And while that may be important, I think that those on the board, we supposedly have brains, we supposedly have beliefs and vision and the ability to figure some of this out. But I think it's critically important that we hear from the community and all the different factions of the community, recognizing that there's no way that we're going to be able to be everything to everyone. It's impossible, and we're going to have to figure out what federation is going to be, but we need to hear. We need the input, and none of us should be so arrogant to think that we have all those answers.
I'm reading them as they came. Are you a corporate raider? Is your sole goal to downsize the organization / programs?
No, I'm not a corporate raider. Never have been, never want to be, never will be. I have built companies. I have not stolen companies. I've always done it very ethically, morally, and have always been a firm believer in building something from just an idea. And I think federation is at that point. It's in its It's been around for a long time, but I would say that at this point, it's in a weird nascency transition period. And there's opportunity to really build something out of the ashes. And we've just got to get it through the ashes to get it to where it can go. So no, I'm not a corporate raider. What was the second part of that?
Is your sole goal to downsize the organization and slash programs?
No, I don't look at it that way at all. The programs are on the revenue side, and then how they're supported is through the expense side. And everything is being evaluated right now. I think it all needs to be evaluated. Every stone is being turned. If you look at it as the building's burning down, it's not about, do I save that chair? It's right now about how do we make sure that all the, that we salvage and evaluate everything to figure out what makes sense to be doing and what does not make sense to be doing. I started out by saying just a little while ago that the overhead of the organization it's not properly sized, and there's not proper financial discipline around it, given that we're 3 million, 3.5 million, whatever the number is, in debt, given that the organization can barely meet payroll. The questions are really, at this point, they seem very obvious to me. They're not, they're new. I think it's a little bit new for this organization to be looking at things somewhat this way. But I think the organization has been very focused on the debt and has less realized this piece of it that is also the operating overhead. So yes, it all needs to be looked at. Should there be as much travel as there's been? It's nice to go to conferences, but the building's burning down. Should everyone be off going to conferences? I mean, there's a lot of stuff that needs to be culturally figured out and some really hard decisions to be made. But understand and please realize there is a strong commitment to community. We've got to be alive to be able to commit to community sustainably. The alternative is that we don't address the hard problems and the organization can go out of business. That was the debate Madeline and I had. If we don't do something about it, it's gone. And I don't think, unless everybody just says blindly, we're going to put up money and support the organization no matter what. But even then, if you don't address the overhead problem of the organization, then all you've done is address the debt and you're still burning cash. You're still burning liquidity and burning donor dollars, after-tax dollars that are donated to the organization.
How do we know that you will continue your commitment and serve your full term?
I've got nothing else to do.
Great, great answer. We'll go to the next question.
No, I'm extremely, the rabbi's laughing harder than anybody. No, I do what I say I'm gonna do. And I've made this commitment after a lot of careful thought, after a lot of careful internal debate, after a lot of soul searching, after a lot of tension in my home. And it's not funny. There's been tension in my home over this. My wife would like me to be around a lot. All of a sudden, everyone saw this over the last few days. I've been emailing at midnight New York time, related to the budget. There's a lot that goes into this effort. I'm not walking away from it. It's not a short-term thing. I'm very, very, very committed to this. So for good or for bad, you're stuck with me. Arlene's trying to figure out how to tolerate me. But I'm very committed to doing this.
You are. Thank you. Have you met individually with all of the current board members? And if no, why not?
Not all individually, but we've all met together in board meetings, and I've met in groups, and I've met some individually. So I think at this point I've met everybody.
Great. We have 3 more questions. How do we do good in the community while also recovering financially?
Well, I think it goes the other way around. We need to run really well. We need to be financially sound and run as a very fine-tuned business, the business of doing good in the community. Does that make sense when I say it that way? It's not the other way around where we're here to do good in the community and the rest of the financial stuff. It doesn't take care of itself. It's been, it got to this point over a few-year period. It didn't just suddenly happen, and it's going to take really making sure that we run this as a very fine-tuned, well-disciplined company, right, I'll use that word, right, organization. And if we do that, the mission of the organization already is to do great good in the community, in the Jewish community. That will continue, provided that the organization is still here to do so.
What partnerships will we leverage?
So this goes back to when I was saying that community relations piece and breaking down the silos and bringing all the organizations together in the community. I think we're going to figure that out. All of this is being learned and figured out at the same time. It's kind of like what's that expression, changing the tires while the car is riding down the freeway. And there's, I think there's great opportunity. There are a lot of organizations that are, very strong and well-run that are doing great good in the community, and we should invite them all in and figure out what we can be doing together. I think, is Steve Kaufman still here? Steve is chair of the board of TVT. He and I have already sat down and, we've tried to start brainstorming and dreaming up things that Federation can do that would be beneficial to the kids at Tarbut. And one of the things I threw at him, well, two of the things I threw at him, and these things, it's amazing, they cost nothing, but the impact they can have are pretty profound, which is, the start of my career was as a result of internships that I had and doors that were open for me. And then I had to, once I got in the door, I had to hang on my own. And in both at Commercial Capital Bank and at Opus, I always gave back through having internship programs. And some of those kids were high school kids. A lot of them were college kids from throughout the country, but some of them were high school kids. So there are a number of us on the board who are very tied into the community, very tied into the business community. Why shouldn't we have a partnership with TVT where we're able to help these kids who are interested, who are in high school, who are in their junior, senior year of high school? Why shouldn't we help them open up a door to have an internship during their summer or even during the school year if they're interested? And when Steve and I discussed that, he got all excited. Then, if you think about all these kids in high school, they have to put in a certain number of community service hours and community service projects. Well, guess what? We have this thing called Federation. Maybe some of them can shadow Arlene. Maybe some of them can learn how to fill out grant applications. Maybe some of them can work with some of the agency organizations that we're very close to and help them walk through grant applications and other things. Why can't they be exposed and have Federation help lead that charge? So as opposed to the traditional, typical community service projects that they all do. So, having some of those partnerships with organizations to leverage some of the things that we all bring to the table at Federation can be very powerful for the kids in the community or for others in the community.
And final question from the ones that were submitted. What will we do to partner with synagogues in the community to pool efforts in outreach and caring for the needy, like the poor, the elderly, Holocaust survivors, etc.?
I think that's a good question for you.
Great. I'll take that question. Thank you. Well, what we want to do in this area in terms of partnership, there are some partnerships already happening. Every one of our congregations most of our congregations have been hosts to our Holocaust survivors. Everybody cares and everybody wants to be a part of it. And we share this with our community organizations. And so each congregation opens up the doors and brings their members together to host the monthly Cafe Europa programs. So that's one way of doing it. This question also asks about what to do for the needy, the poor, and the elderly. We give opportunities for those congregations that don't have their own funds. We provide the Adopt a Family, the Lifelines program that we do. But I also do want to add that it's very important as a community for us to understand what the baseline is in terms of social service needs. And Orange County community has changed through the years, but we don't have a starting point for understanding issues of poverty, housing, the impact of aging in our Jewish community. And so the community study will be the beginning of identifying some of those social service needs that we can then together identify priorities and understand where we want to take that lever and move the needle on some of these issues and do that together as a community.
I think it maybe even goes, that's great. I think we can even go beyond that. Rick, we're meeting tomorrow with how many rabbis? 10? I thought it was 6. Okay. And I think that's, so Rick and I are meeting in the afternoon with 10 rabbis, all congregation related? Okay. Good. So I think that's a great opportunity to hear what's on their mind, and who knows where the conversation will go. And hearing ideas, way we can be impactful together, brainstorming. I think there's a great opportunity to break down all that separateness, all those silos, and figure out how we can work together and be impactful together. So hopefully that comes out of it.
Great. What we wanted to do is we want to do two things. We want to make ourselves available. So first of all, I want to say thank you to Stephen for answering these questions with such transparency, honesty. Thank you. We also wanted to make sure that we made ourselves available to answer more questions. So what we're going to suggest is that if there's any questions from the audience here, we have mics that are going to go around, and we understand that if there's the time, I actually don't have a watch on right now, so I know it's past 8:30, but there's hands up in the air. Please get some beverages and whatnot, make yourself comfortable for here, and if you do need to depart earlier, please do if you can't stay.
Thank you very much, Stephen. We immensely appreciate your
Where's it coming from?
expression.
Please state your name. Thank you.
My name is Roz Vogelfanger, and we are major donors to the community of Jewish Federation. I want to thank you immensely for your commitment. We are very fortunate. I'll get to the point of how are we going to maintain our charity navigation rating when we have the kind of overhead we have, and how can we afford to invest in a CFO if that will contribute to more overhead, if you could address that.
Okay, so very, very relevant questions and timely. So you said, at the back part of your question, you said, if we were to continue this overhead, if I have any say in it, we're not going to. This level of overhead is strangling the organization, and I don't know that I'm humble enough to not speak on behalf of everybody, but I, as a donor, do not feel good about anywhere, whichever number I use, 56% of revenue or 75% of revenue going to overhead. Right? And now I understand the organization needs to have insurance. I understand the organization needs to have certain things in order to operate. It must pay its rent or lease for the space it has upstairs. Right? There are certain things that are somewhat fixed overhead, but there's a lot of stuff in there that's optional and variable and needs to be addressed. Right? So we're going to do that, and as I've recommended, to the two executive committees, when I say the two, meaning the current executive, we're in this Trump transition team period, where, I don't mean to offend anybody on that, there's a transition period that we're in right now of it's December 9th, and the new full board isn't in place till Jan 1, right? Right? And the existing board is still in place till Jan 1, or December 3rd, right? Mm-hmm. Okay, and that applies to the existing executive committee and then the new slated executive committee. I've recommended to both that we not approve this budget until the budget is at a level that is prudent. Right? So we're going to get that under control. Right? The second part of the question about the CFO, just to really drive home the point about this liquidity thing. So we have a search that we're trying to get underway, as well as a search that has been underway. The one we're trying to get underway is to step up the quality of the search that's going on. And And that requires engaging a particular search firm that's made up of former Korn Ferry people that focus specifically on senior executives for nonprofit organizations. All right, that sounds good. And we negotiated down pretty hard the retainer that they get paid. It required a third payment, $7,500 for the initial payment. And I looked to Arlene and she said, how are we going to pay for that? I mean, that was a pretty divine moment. We need to get a CFO. We need to search for a CFO. We don't have the money to go get the CFO. So we need to get the overhead under control. We need to get the liquidity under control. And we need to be able to, at the same time, get the executive in place that we need to get in place, because I'd hate to not be able to get financial answers. I'm not used to that. And right now, the near-term issues that are burning are financial related issues. So we're going to get that figured out and address it. But reducing overhead, and then we do need a CFO. For better or for worse, it's an expense that's actually an important investment to make in the organization, recognizing that part of the savings will be the organization is paying what looks like $400,000, but is more like closer to $600,000 of expense for third-party accounting.
Currently.
And so we would have a cost savings and expense savings by actually hiring a CFO for somewhere around $175,000 instead of paying $600,000 for an outside firm to be helping us with the accounting issues.
So to also answer Roz's point about Charity Navigator, so we continued our 4-star rating for the past 13 years, including up to and including our 2017 990s. So part of what we're doing in terms of bringing the best of the business view of what we do versus the nonprofit view, with Charities Navigator, our fundraising and management expenses, the way that they're defined, are at 25%, with our programming at 75%. And part of what Stephen is bringing to the table with his leadership is really helping us understand just defining overhead and defining prudence in controlling these numbers. So I just want to confirm with everybody that the audited, with the new audit firm, the re-audited 16 and the 17 financials now have already been approved by Charity Star, and they've awarded us with 4 stars for transparency and clarity of those numbers.
So that's interesting. Right? So the organization financially is a mess, and we got a 4-star rating. Right? That reminds me of a bank that I cleaned up, Fremont, that was almost out of business, yet the regulators gave it a 1 rating, which is the best you can get, and they were almost seized. So we've got to, while that may look interesting from the outside, I think we just got to run it really, really well and be impactful in the community at the same time.
Yeah, thank you. Do you have one more question here? Yes.
Good evening. Thank you for your candid answers. I have a 2-part question. My name is Mike Gelman. The first part is, how would you describe the feeling among the employees that remain right now at the Federation? And the second part is, what have you learned in this past year through all the challenges?
I think maybe I can give my initial impression of my sense of employee morale. And I may be completely wrong, but I've been interacting with a handful of them. And then maybe you can give a reality check on where that is. I think that anytime you have a troubled organization and everybody is aware of it, that has an impact on morale. Right? You run the risk that that people are going to feel discouraged. They're going to wonder whether the organization's going to be around, whether there's a commitment to the employees. There was an employee reduction that occurred, a reduction in staff. What month was that in?
It was a bulk of it the end of 2018, and then more in beginning of 2019.
Okay, so that has an impact on morale. They wonder, is there going to be another? Right? That sometimes impacts somebody deciding they're going to update their resume and get the resume out, and then all of a sudden you start spiraling because now you lose somebody that was critical to the organization and that you needed. And sometimes you end up with a knowledge vacuum. If that person leaves, you got to hire somebody else, you got to get them up to speed, et cetera, and transitions never really go all that smoothly. I had 830 employees at Opus, and and there was always something going on around that, and anytime you did have somebody leave, there was a vacuum and you ended up having to deal with transition, and all of a sudden certain things would grind to a halt. Now, it may just be something that is symptomatic of the organization, but I always like the feeling of there being a buzz in the air, some energy in the air, activity in the air. And when I go up to that second floor and I go into the Federation offices, it's very, very quiet. And you can almost hear a pin drop. Now, I don't know if that's structurally the way it's designed, where everybody's in an office, everybody's behind closed doors, it's very, very quiet, or whether a lot of people are out of the office. If they are, I don't know where they are. There's supposedly 37 people in the organization. I've never been up there and seen 37 people walking around.
It's very rare.
Is it what?
Yeah, it's very rare to have all 37 in the office because of their roles.
So I think that it needs a dose of energy. I think it needs to know where the organization is going. I think employees need to be part of the solution. I think they need to be part of embracing where it's going to go and be empowered to help make that happen. Remember what I said about everybody in the room being part of the marketing department? That goes to all the employees of the organization. But they all need to understand what the mission, the vision, the direction, the purpose of the organization is, and then truly embrace it. But I think morale is down right now, and I think we are at risk every day of potentially losing somebody. Is that?
So I'll add to that. So I think some of your observations, given that you've experienced, even with larger groups, what happens when there's cuts and reductions and the natural impact of that. So we have a lot of our staff here tonight. I can't say enough how incredible they are. Their dedication is beyond belief. The work that they do is because they are excellent at what they do and because they care about Jewish community, and they all want to strive for excellence. And I think that some of the clarity that with your leadership we're going to bring is going to help them do better. I think that coming into our offices, it feels like, it's quiet. Well, it's a lot about the structure with all the walls, but there are some incredible moments that when one just walks in the door, you don't see it, but we get together on Monday mornings and we share, we celebrate with each other. There's a lot of laughter. There's supporting one another. So it's a work family. There's caring for one another, but at the same time, I will say that there is a bit of demoralization happening because for 2 years, this staff has watched the cuts happen again and again, and they know that forthcoming, there's even more of a lens on the work that they do. And there's a lot that that the staff have been making lemonade out of lemons every day. And there is concern about how much more sweet lemonade can they make next year, given this. But I think that what you'll learn also as you get to know them more is that they all want to rise to the occasion. And at the end of the day, there's such passion for that. And so 8 or 9 of our staff deal with clients directly. Many of them are not in our offices regularly. Many of us are out in the community meeting with donors. So the long hallway that we have, that we also share with the foundation, that office suite, is really misleading. We would welcome one day, not next year, a whole renovation, take the walls down, do something different, make it feel different. We would love that. But we know that's not happening this coming year.
No, we don't have the money for it. Right, but I do want to say that the team there is incredibly talented. They're very passionate, and as an example, Stephanie, you've been amazing to work with, and you're one of those people, and I've only known a handful of these people in my career who never raises their hand and waves a white flag and says tilt. You just keep on taking on more. So there's a tremendous amount of energy and capacity, within this group, and and I think sometimes being part of a turnaround can be extraordinarily exciting and rewarding. So I think we're going to get this turned around, and that people are going to be part of taking this where it can potentially go.
Do I need to stand? Hi, everyone. Heather Klein. Stephen, I just want to congratulate you on your installation, and welcome.
And you too.
Welcome to the team of leaders that have been working and committed to everything we've been talking about tonight. We have an incredible group of lay leaders, and I think that there's just the best is yet to come. And I want to, you did touch on it a little bit, but in terms of the staff and what we have here in our community, it takes a certain kind of special soul to dedicate your life to Jewish communal work. It is incredibly exhausting, and it's done with very little to work with. And the staff that I have worked with over the years of my involvement with Federation over the years, as is evidenced by the standing ovation for Doris, is one of the most exceptional group of people, both in talent and dedication and passion and partnership. And it's very unusual, I think everybody knows, to be in a nonprofit that's driven by staff and partnership with lay leadership. There are not a lot of organizations that are so lay driven. So the unique relationship between the staff and the people who, by the way, we're turning over all the time, is really a testament to their capabilities, their intelligence, their resilience, their ability to pivot. They don't only go by job descriptions, they go by what needs to get done. So I want to thank the staff. I think everyone who's been on any committee, served on any capacity in Federation, knows how valuable these individuals are. And I think that it's just been stressful, but I know that their reserves for their commitment for Jewish communal work are really boundless, and that takes a very special kind of human being. So thank you to all of them.
Heather's really, really bright, and I was scared she was going to hit me with a question there.
So what I'd like to do at this point, I'd like to thank everyone. I'd like to thank Stephen. I'd like to thank all of you that are here. And I also want to invite everyone for some more coffee and desserts and treats. And Stephen's going to be here. Our board members are here. I'm here. If you have any additional questions, please do follow up with us. And whether or not tonight, at another time, we're here to meet with you, to answer questions, and to have you be part of the future that is surely a bright beacon of light for all of us. Thank you so much.
Thank you, everybody.